So I've always been really intimidated by darning because it's darning, and that's something grandmothers do really efficiently. And I'm neither a grandmother nor efficient. So, but I do really like the sashiko style of darning.
I have actually a bunch of socks with holes, and I'm mostly interested in darning them. So
yeah, DARNING, and just there's a bunch of decent like YouTube. The first couple ones that come up are really good. There's a much nicer way of darning where you can mimic the knit stitch of the sock. I have not enough patience for that, but I mean, if you wanted your mending to blend in, then you could do that. I just used some sock yarn, and it's just back and forth and back and forth. It's all one color, so it doesn't give that really nice effect of like the bigger, like sashiko's often used, it's more used in wovens rather than knits as much, but it makes a really effective darn.
I mean, what's the difference with sock yarn and
okay, so sock yarn is sock yarn is always these days it's always like 15% at least nylon.
Oh, okay.
Because and it's a weight. It's a technical weight actually of yarn.
Oh, okay.
So it just means like a thinner, lighter weight yarn. You don't have to use sock yarn because I did this one. I darned this one with my daughter's hand spun. So it just looks like a seed stitch, really. Okay, Leslie, find your round thing. Okay, apple,
orange, ball, tennis ball.
I'm gonna do this sock because it'll be a nice contrast to the yarn I've got right now. So I'll do. I don't know if you guys can see. There's the hole there. Okay, I've got 2 holes in these socks. I really like them.
3, I think, actually.
3, actually. 3. It's 3. So get yourself an elastic and put it around. It just helps keep it a little bit steady and stabilizes the hole. These are pretty thick wool socks, so I don't feel I really have to stabilize the hole. Some tutorials will tell you to stitch around the edge.
Yeah, that's what I did with mine, like with the...
Yeah, I think if you're using something like embroidery thread on cotton socks or something, I definitely would do that.
Mm-hmm.
But since these are wool socks with wool yarn, so I'm lucky enough to have a daughter who hand spins wool, so I have a whole bunch of extra...
That's cool.
Little bit. I've got a fairly large-eyed needle. It's a decent, it's not too thick or anything. I mean, these are heavy duty socks. It's not a darning needle.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a darning needle. I don't know where it is. So if you have a darning needle, you're lucky.
Marnie,
yeah.
What's the difference between a darning needle and another, like just a big needle?
So a darning needle has, it will have a curve on the end.
Oh.
So it makes it easier for doing this. I start on the outside of the hole, and I'll just start going in and out and in and out and in and out, and I'll leave myself a tail. Mm-hmm. So a decent tail, one that I can rethread afterwards, because I'm going to weave that back in. You don't want any knots. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm pretty tolerant as far as feet goes, but like knots in your socks would not be nice. I don't know if you can see. So that's just a simple running stitch. I've just picked that I'm going to go back and forth this way.
So you went quite a ways past the hole.
I did, because I want to keep the hole stable. There's no point in, I want to keep the patch stable. Like, there's no point in darning it if it's going to pull away from where the edges are friable on the, so these are pretty friable edges. If I tried to do it really close to the edge, it's just going to pull off. It's like trying to, so I don't know if anybody's, yeah, but it's like trying to sew. So I've tried to sew holes in socks before, which you can do, but what ends up happening is that they wear really fast because first of all, the thread is really thin and it cuts basically the knitting, but also it pulls, like so it'll just re-tear and remake a hole. That's why the darning is more like ingratiating itself, right? You're just making another layer of fabric that's that.
Okay, it's woven together, right? Like you're making this.
It's woven together.
Yeah.
So I want to get to the part where I show you how the warp, what the warp looks like over the hole.
So this is also why it might be nice to have a curvy one, right? Because you're trying to go over top of that ball.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier. Like with the lacrosse ball, it's okay because it's not a piece of fruit, so yeah. I'm not too worried about it.
Maybe my socks smell really nice when I did that, but
yeah, they would. So when I make my in and outs. I go again. So there's my first, see where I've gone across the hole?
Yeah, so just a
And
big
I
long
go-
straight one.
And I go beyond,
Yeah.
okay? And then I just make another,
So when you get to the hole, that's holding it in place. So you're making like stitch, 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 and then you're going across the hole, and then
Yep.
stitch, stitch, stitch.
it's
And
weirdly
then-
like, it's weirdly like using the hole, it's like weirdly like using your sock as a frame loom. Like
Okay.
you're just, right now, basically what I'm doing is I'm warping a loom,
Hmm.
except it's a sock. Making my warp there.
Yeah.
I'll keep doing that and I'll go beyond.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll go to probably about here.
Mhm.
And then wherever I stop, I will just I'll just do the same thing. I won't over under because that's like impossible. I'll just running stitch, perpendicular.
Mhm.
Okay.
Perpendicular. When I hit the hole, I'll hit the warp threads and I'll do running stitch and then over, under, running stitch, come back, running stitch, over, under, and come back. And then I'll hit up to the top and then you'll be like, okay, but that's kind of loose, right? So you will go back the way you came.
Hmm.
You'll do running stitch and then I just follow my previous weft. I just follow, like I'll go over, under, and I'll make duplicates.
Mhm.
And then generally I can usually get a third pass in and that makes a nice sturdy patch.
Mhm.
Okay.
So you, and you can go your third, depending on how the weaving has gone in the patch, your third round can be either back the same way you came, but sometimes I find that I'd rather fit it back in this way,
Hmm.
but it doesn't matter. And then when you're done, what you'll do is your little ends, your threads,
Mhm.
you'll put those back on the needle.
Mhm.
You'll take your ball out and you'll put them on the other side of the sock and then you'll weave them back in on the patch. So this is right side out.
You would take it off the ball, turn it inside
Take it off
out,
the ball.
and then weave that last little bit in behind everything
And
is
then
done.
just your ends you'll snip off and then it'll be even fine. Especially if it's wool, it'll just be fine. Like it'll catch itself when it washes and then it'll be a nice little felted patch. It'll be fine.
Cool.
Pretty straightforward.
Thank you.
Yeah, have fun.
This is going to be a great movie.